Hi, this is Darren Clark, the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services with the Waukesha School District, and I'm going to be walking you through a presentation that we've shared with numerous community groups about where the district is in terms of its facility improvement plan and what are the next steps moving forward. So this is the first of three of these recordings that we'll have, and the first one is just going to dive into the district background information related to the process to date, and how did we get here, and touch a little bit on where we stand financially with other school districts in the area and across the state. And then the next sections will um, be looking at the site master plan, and then the third recording will review the proposed solution and outline the community survey that the district's going to be sending out to all the households in the district in mid-April to garner some additional feedback before we map out any future steps. So we'll touch a little bit on where we've been. In 2015, the district started the process of a full review. A facility study was done for each site, which is on the district's website for anyone in the public to review. We've done enrollment and demographic studies. We've held numerous workshops, done site tours of other schools, and held two community focus groups in January and February to look at options and map out potential paths forward. If you're like me, you know a lot about your school, where your kids went, but you don't maybe know about the district in total. We have 26 facilities, nearly 2.4 million square feet, that are made up of 14 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, one of those being our middle school for the STEM program, 3 high schools, 1 alternative high school. We have a district office or administration building, the service building or maintenance center. We have 1 school that is decommissioned, but we're currently leasing it out to a special education provider. And then we have 1 former school not currently being utilized. The district also owns 3 parcels of land. 2 of them we don't deem to be future school sites, but the third one is part of the solution that we'll be walking through. And then off to the right are all the original construction dates for our current facilities. On average, our facilities have a construction date, original construction date of the early 1960s. Here's a map from the demographic study that we had completed, and the reason we did this is just to identify where are the growth areas in the school district, measured by housing starts. The red areas, the deeper colored areas, are the highest areas of growth, being on the west and southwest sides of town. These blue squares here are our existing land holdings. This land holding down here is on 164 south of the city of Waukesha, just north of Highway 43. We own a parcel of land on Oakdale and 59. This is the bypass cutting across here. And then we own a third parcel of land. This is MacArthur Road. When it intersects with Merrill Hills Road, it's a T in the road there. If you look off to the west, there's right now it's a cornfield. The district owns that parcel of land in addition to the 2 other ones. One question we got, and was based off information we shared at the first community focus group meeting, was about our enrollment. We did secure an enrollment study at the beginning of this process, and the chart to the right shows that the district's enrollment has been going down the last several years. We're projecting that it'll bottom out at about 12,000 students. But the important thing about this chart is if you look at it, and this is similar to the district's enrollment over time, it just has a natural wave to it, kind of an up and down cycle. So based on historical data and housing starts, we believe it'll be a couple more years before we finally start seeing that uptick. Declining enrollment is not unique to Waukesha. Of the 424 school districts in the state in 2017-18, 242 of them were facing declining enrollment. So just some financial information, and I think it's important as we start these conversations to um, give you some sense of how do we compare to neighboring school districts, how do we compare to other districts in the state in terms of taxation and expenditures. Um, Probably the best measure of efficiency and expenditures is cost per pupil, and that takes all costs, whether it's food service or busing or um, instructional program and facilities, anything we spend money on, and divides it by the number of kids that you are serving. Um, these charts that we'll be talking over in the next couple of minutes are um, all using the same source, and that's Wisconsin's Taxpayers Alliance, their school facts booklet for fiscal year 2016-17. So this is all third-party information that I've pulled to give you a better idea of how we compare with our neighbors. So this chart is all the K-12 school districts in Waukesha County. Arrowhead is not in this chart because they're a union high school. They have independent elementary schools that feed into them, so it's hard to do a direct cost comparison because not all of their elementary schools are expending at the same level. So I've just excluded them from this chart, but every other K-12 district in the county is reflected. Um, so this is cost per pupil, and you'll notice that New Berlin and Menominee Falls are near $14,000 per student. Elmbrook is at $13,496. The state average is $12,785, and I'll come back to this number in a little bit. I'll do some math to give you an idea of the scale of the difference between the state average and where Waukesha is currently. The county average or area average is 12,500, and Waukesha comes in at 11,579. If you spend a lot as a school district, generally you have a higher level of taxation. That is obviously one of our primary sources of revenue. So Menominee Falls and New Berlin were at the higher end of the cost per pupil. They're at the higher end of the tax rate chart too. They're at 1168 and 1116. State average is 997. The area average is just about at the state average, so roughly just under $10. $10 in a tax rate, and Waukesha comes in. We have the lowest tax rate in Waukesha County at 866. This is whenever you use a third-party source, they're always a year behind because they have to gather and then tabulate and then publish their information. So this is 16-17 budget data. This year for the 17-18 school district or school year, we actually have an $8.21 tax rate. Some people could say, well, why are you comparing Waukesha to Pewaukee or Mukwonago or Muskego? You know, you're so much larger. Is it a fair comparison? And there's probably some validity to that point of view. So I gathered, using the same source data, I gathered what I called the large district cost per pupil comparison. We're the 8th largest school district in the state. So I took anyone that was either higher than us in terms of enrollment or close to us. So you have Madison, Milwaukee's, but you also have Janesville's and Eau Claire, Green Bay's that are very similar to us in terms of size. So I ran the same cost per pupil comparison. Madison and Racine, MPS, all in that $14,000 range. Waukesha comes in at $11,579. So hopefully between the area averages and the large district averages, you'll be able to draw some conclusion in terms of our cost per pupil efficiency and level of taxation. Here are the tax rates, and again, if you spend a lot per pupil, you generally have a higher tax rate. There are other variables involved, but in general, that's how the financials flow through based on cost per pupil. State average, again, is $9.97. Large district average is just over $10, and Waukesha comes in at $8.66. Here's Waukesha's tax rate history from, I just grabbed 2000, so you have 17 years of data here. So we're at a pretty low point in comparison to the previous years. Leading up to 2008, the rates were lower, but valuations of property were extremely high during that point. And then obviously in 2008, there was a correction. So as those property values dropped, the rate went up. So this is kind of I think, a unique dip and then rise. But now as I mentioned before, we're at 821. Our average over that time is just under $9. So we're below the average tax rate over the last 18 years. This chart is demonstrating how much Waukesha County school districts have in debt outstanding, meaning dollars of principal outstanding. It doesn't adjust for their size. So when looking at this chart, keep in mind that we're 2 or 3 and in probably some cases 4 times bigger than these other districts in terms of enrollment and tax base. Oconomowoc has done a lot of referendum and reinvestment in their facilities the last few years. So Oconomowoc is sitting at roughly $80 million of outstanding debt. Elmbrook did a significant reinvestment in their 2 high schools a handful of years ago. They're at $60 million. Then you have some other districts who have recently passed referendums, and you can see the blue chart is where they ended fiscal year 2016. The green line is where they ended 2017. Muskego went to referendum and issued new debt. That's why you have that growth. Mukwonago is in the process of putting $50 million into their high school. That's why you have that growth. Waukesha is way down here, and we'll actually be completely debt-free in 2021. We have $3 million of outstanding debt right now. We make about $1 million a year debt payment, and so in terms of our size, we have a very low debt obligation. Hamilton, who's below us on the graph, just passed in February a I believe it was $56 or $57 million referendum, so they'll be issuing new debt in the near future. So overall, just to hit on some key points that I'd like you to remember. Over the last 6 years, the school district's tax rate has dropped 14.3%. We continue to operate well below the state average in terms of cost per pupil and mill rate levels. I mentioned earlier that state average for cost per pupil, which comes in at $12,785. We're at $11,579. It's about $1,200 per student. That may not seem like a lot of money, but when you multiply it by the 13,000 students roughly that we're educating every year, we'd have to spend $15.6 million more per year just to spend what the average expenditure per pupil in the state is. We're not advocating for that, but I think some of this financial information is just good to know, regardless of whether you buy in or consider our facility plan a good option or not. I think overall, I hope you take away that the district's in pretty good financial position. Again, at the end of fiscal year 21, we'll be debt free. We currently have $3.2 million in outstanding debt. Continuing looking at third parties looking at us and measuring our financial stability or strength. Standard & Poor's, our last rating was in 2014. You might ask, well, why haven't you had one more recently? We haven't issued any debt, so we have not secured an additional rating from either Standard & Poor's or Moody's, but our last one is AA stable. That's actually a very high. It doesn't sound high with stable as the descriptor, but if you look at all the districts out there that have bond ratings currently, not all of them do. Some of them have not issued debt in a very long time, so they haven't asked for a rating. We're AA under Standard & Poor's, so there's only 18 school districts in the state that have a higher bond rating than we do, and I actually believe some of these are duplications. If you're a district who's looking to issue debt and you have a very strong balance sheet, sometimes you go to both rating agencies to see if one will give you a slightly better grade than others. So again, a very high bond rating for the school district. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions about this information, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. The district website has a lot of information on our facilities, planning, and background information. There's some frequently asked questions, um, documents out there that can help you understand where we are and the conversations we're having. So I appreciate you listening, and I hope this information is helpful. And again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.